What is up, guys? It is the Sound Alchemist, and today we're gonna talk about Warhammer 40K once again. However, it's gonna be a little bit different since it's not a lore video. We are talking about the increasing mainstreamness of Warhammer 40K. So if you're unaware, ever since 8th edition hit, things have changed for us wargamers in a good way, I would say. So when 8th edition came, the rules got a lot more streamlined, it became easier to play, faster to play, and I guess you could say this revamp was all because I think there was like a new team around Gamesworkshop trying to basically make their game more user-friendly to bring in a wider audience, and that's also why they decided to go with the brand new Primaris Marines. Make them more true to scale, make them a little bit more better looking detail wise, and this was, in my opinion, pretty well received. I understand that there's always good and negatives with any new thing that comes out. For example, people saying that the Primaris Marines are essentially going to phase out the old school Space Marines, which they've said no, but it's kind of looking like that's what's happening because I don't know, it's just when you look at the old school Space Marines, yeah, they're a little smaller, the proportions may not be 100% correct, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't have any Primaris, and I don't know if I'm going to be buying any Primaris sooner or later, but obviously if you're into that, go ahead. More options, the better it is for everyone. So after 8th edition, the new Primaris, the sleeker, slimmed down rules, they started branching out towards more kid-friendly things, such as the introduction to Warhammer Adventures, which was very controversial because obviously Warhammer is all grim, dark, war, blood, chaos, Slanesh, and all that stuff. And now you're introducing this IP that's supposed to be pretty grim, dark, and like scary and whatnot to children, and it's like, whoa, like I don't know, like this really shouldn't be. I don't know, maybe you gotta wait till they're a little bit older, but Warhammer Adventures is taking it like a, I don't know, kind of like into a children's book area, and I don't know how. I mean, obviously the stories are tailored to that genre and that demographic, so they're not going to be as intense as what, like the Demon Kulaba and all that stuff. But that's another way that GW is branching out to bring a wider audience in. And now, previously, they decided to branch out and create a team up with the guys from like the Funko Pops. And you've got Funko Pops for Space Marines. So that's also trying to bring in the pop collectors into the 40K universe. And then we moved on to actually getting a live action show with one of the guys from like the Amazon series, the High Castle or something like that, High Tower. So we're getting a live action Space Marine, or not Space Marine, a live action Inquisitor TV show, which would hopefully bring in more people to play 40K. Obviously, we've seen the successes of many live action stuff. For example, we've got The Witcher being a new live action TV show that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And you also have 40K now competing in that little genre. So with that being put out there, more people are going to be aware of 40K. It's becoming more and more popular by the day, I would say. Just like D&D is. Like, for some reason, D&D exploded with popularity, and I'd have to say that Stranger Things was a good push for that, because it pushed D&D into the spotlight as popular as Stranger Things was. So I think they're trying to mimic something along the lines with bringing in Warhammer 40K to popular culture, to bring in a wider audience, make more revenue, put out more new things for 40K, so that's always good. And then even more recently, Games Workshop has been working alongside Bandai to come out with an action figure for the Primaris Space Marines. This is interesting because same thing as with the Funko Pops. It's like, I play 40K, why would I spend my money to buy pops and action figures when I could just use that money to just buy more models or paints and stuff like that to further the hobby? Obviously, if you're a collector, you're gonna get these just to get them. So you could say, oh, I've got the whole 40K collection of Funkos and action figures and whatnot. But I don't know. I feel like that's an interesting thing to do. Create action figures for when you already have models. Because I know if I got these action figures for Christmas or whatever, I want models instead. Like, I can't use this freaking action figure in the game. Like, scales off and whatnot. I mean, it might look cool sitting on a shelf, but I'd rather just have more minis, more models. But I mean, if they're working with Bandai to make these things, I mean, Bandai also does video games, they do other things like that, so maybe they'll branch out to more interesting avenues. But hey, if you're into collecting action figures, they're gonna have a Primaris ready and waiting for you to purchase, especially since the holiday season is coming up. So I think that's also another reason as to why they're taking advantage of this. And finally, the last thing that I want to touch base on is that Games Workshop is working alongside Marvel to bring you Warhammer 40K comics. That's pretty interesting. That is actually, out of all the things I've said in this video, that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about. Yes, even more than the live action show. But it's interesting. We're going to be getting comics and storylines for Space Marines that we all know and love, I would assume. Like, maybe we get to look at a more in-depth portrayal as to the events that happened for the revival of Gilliman, or maybe they're going to be talking about other events that aren't so notable, such as the War in Heaven, or maybe focusing on like a squad of Tau infiltrating something. I don't know. The things they can take with comic books is so vast. They can do what ifs, they can do holiday specials. Literally, it's, the sky's the limit. And since they're working with Marvel, maybe we get a crossover event. We see the Primarchs teaming up with the Avengers to take on like villains and Horus and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting to see, especially how big Marvel is. And then they're teaming up with Warhammer 40K. Like, yeah, they're really pushing to make 40K like a household name, where back in the day it was such an obscure concept. Because I remember when we first started doing the YouTube thing, and we're like, oh, you guys have a YouTube channel? Cool, what do you do? I'm like, oh, we play Warhammer 40K. 9 times out of 10 they'd be like, what? What is that? And then so you'd have to explain to them, and they're like, oh, okay, but they don't really understand. Or you show them a video and it's like you're literally talking a different language, because it's like, oh, this is a Primarch Gilliman, and he has Battle Brothers and Astartes that he commands, and you have the Emperor and all this stuff, and they're just like blank face. So now that 40K is becoming more readily available, more broadening their horizons with video games, other board games, because they have teamed up with WizKids before to make like a card game. Now they're doing comics, action figures, Funko Pops. You're gonna start seeing 40K pretty much everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but like, I think you'll start seeing them more at like Walmart, Target, Barnes and Nobles, that kind of thing. So maybe it'll be more easier to get the models. You don't have to just go to a specific hobby shop or the GW store or online. You can actually go to like Target, and maybe they'll be selling like the starter set or something like that. So overall, I think this is really good for the hobby. The wider the horizons for GW is, the more revenue they could bring in. The more revenue they have, the more money they can put into making better sculpts, better codices, more minis, stuff like that. So love it or hate it, I think they're taking steps in the right direction. But at the same time, like, I'm not gonna get the pops. I'm not gonna get the action figures. I'll probably watch the show just to see how it is, because I mean, the whole storyline between the Inquisitor Eisenhorn is pretty cool. So I want to see if they do it justice, or if it's just, something to have on in the background while you paint. So I'll check that one out. And I'm interested to see what the comics do, because if you weren't aware of, there have been Warhammer 40K comics in the past. I've actually held one and read one. I think it was like Blood Angels, and they were like in the jungles or something like that. So they have had comics before, but I'm trying to see what they're going to do with Marvel teaming up with them. So really, really interesting ideas and avenues that are being taken place currently with our hobby that we love and play. So again, guys, I want to know your opinion. Will you be getting the pops? Have you read the Warhammer Adventures stuff? Is that a way that you introduce your kids and other people into the hobby? Will you be checking out the movie and the comics and all that stuff? Again, let me know what you think of all this interesting stuff. And yeah, that's all I got for today. So can't wait to read your comments, and I think this is good for the hobby. So we'll see what more interesting things Warhammer has up their sleeve. As always, this is the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.